What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another preview / prediction video, and today we're here with a big one, man. It is that time. It's officially that time to dive into this matchup. It's a conference championship matchup. It's the Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers. So let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, man, we are back. As I just threw my pen, as you can tell, I'm fired up to do this video, man. This is just exciting. It's just exciting, man. One game away from the Super Bowl. We have an opportunity 60 minutes away, I think is a more fun way to put it, from a Super Bowl. Though it's like, you know, it'll probably be 4 hours. You know, they're going to have a lot of commercials. They're like, hey, let's get some. But the point is, we're that close to getting into the Super Bowl for the first time ever. So no one's seen this. I don't even have to look. No one can tell me, I remember that year. No, you don't, because it didn't happen. Until now, maybe. That's what we're going to talk about today, if the Detroit Lions are going to the Super Bowl or not. And I'm going to give you my preview / prediction. But as you may have heard on different outlets, maybe you saw it on Bleacher Report, I'm pretty confident. I'm actually very confident in this matchup for the Lions. Now, there's actually a lot of things San Francisco does really well. There's a reason that they finished 12-5, that they were the 1 seed this year. Obviously, the last week they rested their starters and they lost that game. There's a reason, all right, that this is one of the best teams in the NFL. I don't think there's a reason that they're favored by 7, but, you know, that's more of a betting thing than anything. The point is, and by the way, speaking of betting, use that top link in the description. Partner this season with BetUS, man, so make sure you use that top link. We'll talk about them a little bit more in this video. But, man, there's so much to dive into with this one, and I still have yet to get a prediction exactly right until now. I think we're on the right track. We were just 7 points under. So if each team would just scored another touchdown, or one less touchdown, I should say, we would have nailed it. We were right there. It was actually really good. I think it was one of our better preview / predictions. I think every week, really since the Denver game, we've been money with a lot of these. So at some point, we're going to hit one of these right on the head, and I feel really good about this one. With that being said, though, let's first take a look at the practice report, because as the time I'm recording this, it is on a Thursday. By the time you're seeing this, it's probably a Friday. But I want to start there first with the practice report from the Lions side, because to be honest with you, there's not a lot going on the San Francisco 49ers side of things. Jonah Jackson, no participation for the second straight day. He is expected to miss this game, which in a way I think is good, because it gives the Lions some clarity that he's probably not going to be playing this weekend. But also it's not great, because he is a very big part to this offensive line. We've had him this year. We've been without him this year, and he does make a big difference when he's out there. The positive is KO'd played a lot of last week, and we were still able to have some success rushing the football. The downside is he didn't do particularly great in pass protection, so that's a very big concern, especially against this interior defensive line, especially if they know you're passing the football. That is one of the biggest strengths of this defensive front, is rotation that they have on the interior, but also they're all really good at rushing the passer. Continuing, though, Chase Lucas is a new addition, no participation, listed with illness, so we'll keep an eye on that. Hopefully he feels better. Frank Ragnow, no participation, but Frank Ragnow did speak to the media and said that he was surprised that he was feeling this much better, and as you can see, there has been basically 2 new injuries added for Frank Ragnow in last week's game. Frank Ragnow has been going through it all year. I mean, the guy's injury doesn't even fit in the chart. It doesn't even fit. All right, he's going through it, though, but he is an absolute tank. I expect Frank Ragnow to play just because that's what he does. We know this guy's tough. You guys remember when he played and he couldn't even talk? Okay, this dude, I just expect him to be out there. He's going to find some way to get out there. Continuing on, Collie Freeman, no participation. Probably doesn't seem like he's going to play this week either once again. We haven't had him the last 2 games. Alex Anzalone limited these last 2 days. Sam Laporta, this is a big positive, returned to practice today in limited fashion, so that's a huge positive to having him play this week. Keep in mind, Wednesday was a walkthrough. Also, Josh Reynolds limited these last 2 days. I came into the week kind of concerned whether or not he would play, but limited on Wednesday and Thursday makes me optimistic that he's trending the right direction. And then finally, James Houston, full participation for the second straight day. Really, for the last 2.5 weeks, this guy's had full participation, and according to Aaron Glenn, he is taking it very seriously. He doesn't mess around with injuries, and he also wants to get this guy back on the field so he can go out there and make some plays. So, you know, he's trying to basically protect the player from himself, as he says, but at the same time, he does want to get him back out there, it sounds like. And I do think we're probably going to see James Houston at some point this weekend, but he made it also sound like it was more of an injury thing than anything last week. So who really knows how they feel that he is currently at this spot. Let's dive into this. Let's start with the San Francisco 49ers offense first. offense. Now, you guys know we're going to dive into a lot of things here, but I will show kind of the background of this offense first off. You can see their offensive line on the screen as well as their statistical production this season. Rushing the football, they're one of the best in the league, and of course, they have Deebo Samuel, which is really the biggest side note to their injury report, as he's the only guy that was listed today.
Deebo was listed with limited participation today.
I mean, it sounded like early in the week it was kind of 50-50 or whether or not he would play. But it seems like, most players, if they can get out there, they're going to get out there in this big of a game. And it seems like he's probably going to play this weekend. So I'm kind of looking at this as if Deebo Samuel was playing in this weekend's game. And he adds a lot to the rushing attack. Also, Brock Purdy's stats were really good. And on top of that, I think the biggest thing is what they were situationally. Third down offense, first in red zone offense. And I've seen teams have success. Of course, someone had to have success. It's only 67.2%. But what you do see is a very creative offensive play caller, and they just get guys open, man. If they have a sense of what tendency you're going to run when they get at certain spots, they have a very creative way to get guys open every single game. And then also, of course, third in points per game. So we'll start there first. Let's dive into this offense and really my takeaways. What are the keys for the Lions to have success against this San Francisco 49ers offense? And then also kind of what to expect against this offense. So, of course, we'll start with the rushing attack first. Now, I will say this to me, that this offense is built a lot more on scheme in terms of rushing the football, also utilizing a lot of athleticism and dynamic playmakers with the ball in their hands. They may not be breaking news to anybody, whether that's Christian McCaffrey. Deebo Samuel schematically also does a lot of similar things to Christian McCaffrey. He'll line up at running back. They utilize him on a lot of jet looks as well. So he's very effective in a lot of the same run scheme that Christian McCaffrey has also used. It's a heavy outside rushing scheme that they utilize there. A lot of zone, a lot of stretch, a lot of sweeps, those kind of things. But San Francisco, to me, is much more built on a scheme side of things rather than just being dominant up front. And I do think that's an area where you say, okay, this is a battle we have to win. Like, we have to have success here more often than not is up front, especially on some like the outside zones, like when they do stay between the tackles. Start there first. One of the most utilized rushing schemes that I noticed when watching this team was, of course, their stretch run. It's one of the areas where they really take advantage of their athleticism. Instead of making everything a one-on-one block for their offensive line, it's a lot of that zone blocking. It's getting wide on the play and allowing their playmakers to just pick the hole and be dynamic with the football. Now, on top of this, they also put a lot of guys in the mix. They really make your linebackers work laterally. As a defensive line, you really have to work to stay on the front side of your gaps. Then, of course, they're going to put the DBs in the mix as well, which you guys know. I always have confidence in the run support that those guys are going to give us. But they also have a ton of eye candy. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but I will say, depending on who they're playing, if their defensive line likes to shift with the strength of the formation, you'll see motion to try to shift that at the snap and get someone caught behind in the gap. But also, where I think really the key starts here, and this one may be kind of obvious, is at the edge defender position. It's the edge defenders against tight ends or potentially against offensive tackles as well at the point of attack. But like I said, this is where they're going to really stress your second level flow. And this is also an area where I love Derek Barnes into this game. And maybe this is a spot where they try to kind of go away from him. But I think in a way, kind of like when I watched Dallas and Micah Parsons had some very effective run stops against this offense, I do think Derek Barnes can bring some kind of that dynamic athleticism to stopping their run game. In particular, forcing bounce backs, right? Forcing cutbacks, forcing a guy to get really wide on the play and kind of banana out because of how aggressively he can get upfield. He sheds blocks maybe better than any linebacker we have, really, outside of like a Malcolm Rodriguez. And especially when you talk about kind of that lateral sideline to sideline speed that people love to say, Derek Barnes is near the top of that list in really every category. So for me here, this is where Derek Barnes can become a difference maker for us into this game. Of course, we're going to need all of them, but he could be a difference maker on those runs in particular. Now, with that being said, they also utilize their tight ends to lead block, and this is something that we saw the Lions do at one point. I think this started a lot last year, but utilizing tight ends from the opposite side to become lead blockers as well. George Kittle, they're a very heavy personnel offense, okay?
So I thought this was a great example by Green Bay here. Now you can see on the play, they shift everything pre-snap. They want to flip the run, so they bring the tight end over, slide the strong side, and as you can see, they're giving it off to a receiver on this play. But as you see on this play, the 7 technique, Kenny Clark, upfield, maintains his gap pre-snap, and also the linebackers aggressively fill. Then again, the edge defender on this play handles the tight end on the front side. So this is what I'm saying. You have to be able to maintain the gap. You're going to play aggressive, and then also on the front side, if you can win like this against the tight ends, sometimes it's going to be a double team. They're going to bring a tight end as well. If you can handle ground there and make them get inside, then it's just about playing your gaps to the front side. And always that backside pursuit has to play with their hair on fire.
Passing the football, rushing the football, very heavy personnel. You get a lot of Kyle Juszczyk. You get a lot of 2 tight ends. You get a lot of 21 personnel or 12 personnel, but it's a lot of heavy personnel offensively.
Now, San Fran, again, on this play is going to go right at that 3-tech on the side on this play. Now, you can see that on the front side, if you can get into your gap and control your gap, potentially play that gap and a half style, then you can set yourself up really well. But you notice how they utilize that athleticism, man. The center, the guard, they step in front of both gaps there. They get CMC to the second level, and that's where he's just dynamite because he's so tough for defensive backs to tackle in space.
That being said, one of the other run schemes that I'm really focused on in this game is some of their counter pull offensive schemes. So we don't see a ton of maybe the gap rushing or the pulling offensive linemen from this offense. However, this is an area where we do see them pull offensive linemen, and it really comes back to now the defensive tackles. This is one of those games where not only awareness pre-snap if your defensive line shifts, but specifically it's also being aware of here comes the down block, being able to hold my ground. This is a really important game that's going to stress these interior defensive linemen in this spot in particular because they're going to try to down block and wash you out of play with their offensive tackles.
So this is one of those plays where you see a few things. First off, again, the defensive tackle is going to get completely washed out on this play by Trent Williams. He's going to down block here. But then also you start to look at the movement they get. First off, their tight end shoots to the second level, picks up David. For that spot, you obviously want to be able to keep yourself clean there because him getting sealed up by a tight end really just creates the mess here, and no one's clean to make the tackle. But then once he gets beyond that second level, wide receivers blocking up their corner, safeties in are trying to come down and make the play. So he's already on to the third level.
That's an area where I really focus on those guys being able to hold the ground at all to try to kind of make the gap that the running back or that lane that he's trying to get to just a little bit smaller. Also, again, here's where they utilize that tight end and offensive lineman to pull. So not only do they pull an offensive lineman, but they also, again, will pull around their tight end so they'll get an extra blocker through in these spots.
Yeah, this is one of those games where the linebackers second level, they're going to get hands on you. So the ability to get off these blocks, win at the point of attack, Derek Barnes, Jack Campbell, it's been like that all year long. Those two guys in particular, I would even throw Malcolm in this game at times. I would look for that. Malcolm Rodriguez as well, another guy that I like being able to get off of blocks at that second level. Those guys on the front side, man, they're going to have to handle business. But to be honest, they throw everybody in this because of all the lead blockers.
Now, back to kind of the stretch running, you'll also see kind of the toss stretch variants as well. A lot of times, again, you get this kind of to the strong side of the formation. Against Green Bay, we saw them starting to utilize a fullback in the second half, but this is where I really stressed defensive tackles staying in front of their gaps, right? If you have the B gap pre-snap, you got to be able to get out into that B gap if you're on the front side of the run play. But honestly, even on the back side, and that's really important as well because it shows up maybe more like outside zone plays where it's like, hey, you did go down the front, now he's trying to cut back and he runs into somebody, especially if they leave you unblocked. In a lot of these cases, they will leave you unblocked. But even on the backside, especially when you talk about the interior, not getting washed out behind because once that happens, you lose the gap. And again, these running backs or Debo that has it, they're so dynamic, they can cross the entire field. So they'll take advantage of you getting washed behind a gap that a defensive lineman was supposed to be into. One thing I will expect at some point, even though I didn't see a ton of teams necessarily do this, so I do expect to see Aaron Glenn at times do something that we've seen him do a ton, which is timely blitzing to try to allow, especially if you can get it off the front side, to try to allow them to slant gaps. You also see it off the backside as well. A team like Dallas, for example, we got to see how aggressive they were just by how they would shift offensively. If a fullback went offset, you see on the backside maybe they'd shift. Now against a team like that, again, strategically, San Fran came in, they had a lot of counter plays. So I would assume San Fran's going to come into this game and say, let's have those counters kind of up our back pocket because we can expect that Aaron Glenn's probably going to try to get aggressive, probably going to try to create a negative, and because that we can exploit them. Now, for that's where it comes back to me to the edge defenders, right? Those guys on the backside, they have to be able to win versus the tight ends. They have to be able to hold their ground, especially on the outside zones where a lot of their outside zones are split zone blocks. It'll come back to the backside there and also the cornerback play. All right, now I want to give a shout out to our partner for this NFL season, man. That is BetUS. Use that top link in the description. If you deposit at least $100, you get 125% match up to $2,500 if it is your first time. Also, did want to showcase the website a little bit here to show you guys what's really going on here. Now, I'm sure, like me, you're very interested because you're watching this video in this NFC Championship game between the Lions and San Fran. You can also take a look at this one, but this is the one that matters. This line has changed a little bit, by the way. You can see they got the lines currently at +7, and the money line is +270. I think that's crazy, all right? I'll talk about who I got in this game, but you probably already know where this thing is going. Also, you can also check out the markets as well. This is where I love to live, man. We've been doing this a lot of the weeks this season where we take a look at the great game props, and you can build build a bet slip, whether that's maybe you want to go, hey, Dave Montgomery has over 10.5 carries. Let me tie that along with also Jared Goff has over 257.5 yards. He's cooking in this game. And let me throw another one in there. You know that man, Brian Branch, getting a pick at some point at plus 500. You can build out a parlay on your own, or you can also use some of their pre-built parlays as well. As you can see on the left side here, man, look at all the options you got, man. Basketball, ice hockey, baseball. Really, I know basketball is in season right now. College basketball, March Madness, man. It's coming along pretty fast here. But then also the NBA, of course. And on the top, it's not just sports betting. It's also casino games. It's also racebook. And, of course, you also have your promotions, which if you are re-upping or you're a first-time customer, you should go check that out. But just, use that top link. But as you can see here, man, they got a lot of casino games as well that you can get involved in. And I will say this, if you do start making bets with BetUS, you will get added into the loyalty program, which is where you can start to earn some really awesome perks just by betting with BetUS. They have a lot of cool options on here. The props builder is something I love by game, right? You can pick a specific player, build a prop for a specific player. If you're thinking, man, this guy's going to cook, go build it over there. And then also live betting while the game is going on, you'll see odds shift and change. So this is the place to be. If you're doing sports betting, or maybe you want to bet on the NFL, maybe you're like, hey, man, that Super Bowl MVP, hey, I know who the Super Bowl MVP winner is going to be. Well, this is your spot to do that. As you can see, you got Jared Goff at plus 1,000 right here. St. Brown at plus 5,000. I mean, that's real interesting if you ask me. So you can also take a look at futures as well. Great customer support. They actually just tried to message me there. And if you sign up, man, they'll make sure that you stay up to date with everything by email. They can stay in contact with you in a lot of different ways, man. So this is the spot to be if you're going to do sports betting, or maybe you want to dabble in some casino games and you're like, hey, NFL season's about over. I want a futures bet. Maybe I want to look at the draft, or maybe I haven't made a bet this year, so let me do it. This is the spot to do it, man. Check it out. Just sign up. Use that top link in the description. All right, now let's get back to the video. I'll say I wouldn't be afraid to go at times occasionally a little bit lighter in personnel. Now, we'll talk about this a lot more in coverage, but I think in a way, in some sense, at times it kind of helped Dallas not to be, a team that has like a whole bunch of typical off-ball linebackers, because, again, that heavy personnel kind of forces you to match that with backers, and then they're doing everything lateral. They're running away from guys. So at times, it's not always the worst thing. I mean, if you get blocked up at the second level, it can be difficult for you to get off the block, but in terms of pursuit, in terms of just being on top of the play, not getting caught behind, at times it's not the worst thing to have defensive backs. And again, I trust our guys run support like Branch. I think at times, man, that guy handles it better than linebackers. So, like, having guys like that on the field, they're going to be massive against the run. I don't think you should. We'll talk about that more in the passing attack. But
For me, there's really two things here. Number one, this is where the blitzing can be effective, because then you give yourself an opportunity to slant into gaps. Number two, if not, a safety rolling down into the box. That doesn't mean he has to be there after the snap, but pre-snap, having a safety down low, whether that's iffy or maybe you're just putting Branch in that spot because they're going heavy personnel. Overall, I'm not taking Branch out of this game really at all. No matter where I put him, I think he can help me against the run big time, at times better than linebackers can. So he would never come out of the game to me in this one. But even on a spot like this, if you're trying to play multiple gaps, they still get on the front side. And then again, here's the edge defender. Even if he sets the edge well, it's still a big gap to hit here as a back.
Expect some occasional blitzing from Aaron Glenn here, trying to create negatives, trying to throw off some of these, plays that they try to get wide and just jump in front of gaps. Now, with that, again, the outside zone, this is where they use eye candy to me really well, and you'll see it by this. So not only do they have the split zone aspect, and sometimes they'll have movement pre-snap to kind of set that up instead of just having it happen on the snap, but they also then utilize a lot of times kind of a jet look right before the split zone happens. So now you have our linebackers, they'll shift, and then here comes the split zone. Now they're watching that, and then there's the handoff. So they do a really nice job with eye candy. Sometimes they can get teams that just completely take their linebacker out of the box, and they can lighten the box a little bit, put a defensive back into the box, but the outside zone comes with a lot of eye candy. Now, in this case, where the Lions can have success, they should dominate their guards and their center, to be honest, on the interior. That's where you have to win, because, again, you're going to get a lot of this between the tackles, so this is where those guys have to be great. Now, again, like I said, with this, there's a couple little wrinkles. First one being occasionally you'll get a read option from the quarterback. It's rare, but occasionally you'll pull it down to take off. It's kind of like when Baker did it. Like, it's not often, so it's not something I'd be like, hey, let's get worried about this, but it will happen occasionally. And then also they like to use this on short yardage. But again, the backside run pursuit is key, because I expect our front side to do well, especially on the interior. So then the backside run pursuit becomes key in stopping these. And then again, like I said, aggressive defenses, they're going to come at you with counters, so you have to be prepared for that on the backside. Now, with that being said, we also then talk about jet sweeps and somewhat end arounds, but really the jet sweeps. And again, like I said, Debo will play like McCaffrey. He'll line up at running back, but this is where he starts becoming very, very effective. And I could just tell. Like, I watched the Green Bay game. I'm like, okay, I don't see him, so I'm watching. I'm like, okay, this is it's whatever offensively. Then as soon as you get Debo in there, like, oh, okay, this is different. now it makes things different because all of a sudden he gets the ball from the receiver alignment, he gets it on jet sweeps, and all of a sudden now that eye candy becomes very much so something that you have to respect because he'll just give him the football. So it's very effective in that sense, but it's also, again, similar schematically to just the stretch run play that you're going to see McCaffrey have. The difference is they're giving it to a receiver. So at times, I guess, yeah, maybe it slows down kind of your linebackers in the inside, but again, that's why it's going to come back to, the edge defenders on the front side being able to win against tight ends. Also, if you can create penetration upfield, which is why I expect some here and there blitzing from Aaron Glenn and just kind of taking some risks with that.
One of the things that I love that Green Bay did was stacking the line of scrimmage in particular, in this case putting a safety down, but not always, but specifically if they had multiple tight ends on the line of scrimmage, stacking the line of scrimmage and almost seemingly saying, hey, we're going to make sure we have a guy for each gap, specifically outside of the B gap, and they would shift to the strong side of the formation, and you would put like your off-ball linebacker on the line of scrimmage and he could drop into coverage, but specifically saying we have to be able to have a piece for the B, C, and D gap.
And then finally, once they get into goal line situations, you look out for some strong double teams. They don't do it all the time, but that's where you start to get some of the duo, especially counter duo run scheme. Now, in the passing attack, this offense, I know a lot of people are going to make a lot about Brock Purdy passing the ball, and I'm not even going to go into any of the numbers or anything like that. Like, that is what it is. I'm just going to tell you what I saw from watching the guy. I don't need to go into all that. So like I said, this is a heavy personnel offense, right? And they want to put your linebackers in the mix. Here's the overall key against this team. The key is covering the middle of the field and being solid on the outside. That's kind of how I wrote it down. Covering the middle of the field, being solid on the outside. In a way, Dan didn't say this, but when he said they run a lot of daggers, right? We got to take those away. In breaking routes, basically, right? That is the key of this offense. And now you'll get throws where you're like, man, where is Purdy throwing that? He throws with a lot of anticipation, and at times he plays with a lot of confidence doing that as well. And that's where you can get sometimes some dangerous throws. But at the same time, this is a guy that I think occasionally you can mix things and get him to not love what he sees, miss guys that are open. I've seen multiple, everybody misses guys that are open. I'm talking about missing guys that are wide open. That happens. That will happen with Brock Purdy for sure. This is where the challenge starts. So first off, aggressive on the outside. Now, what do I mean? Well, I think you're going to see a lot of quarters coverage in this game, right? You're going to see a lot of emphasis on trying to take away the middle field aggressiveness there. The issue then becomes on the outside. A lot of times guys get isolated. Now, if you're playing cover 2 consistently, or for Tampa Bay, for example, they played some cover 6. The issue is that they exploited that because they just kind of sat in it. Biggest thing with this team is you have to, if you're going to find a base coverage that you like to sit in, I think that's fine. You just have to have wrinkles to it. You can't do the same thing on every single first down, right? You have to have wrinkles to it. However, especially if you're playing a lot of cover 3, we saw Dallas, they had issues with this. They had issues specifically on the boundary side of the field dealing with some of those speed out routes, right? Stephon Gilmore, they were just going at him over and over. Like the first drive was 3 times they went at the guy on just different routes like that. Let's just throw it at the guy. He can't keep up with him from off coverage. Plus, it's on the short side of the field, so the ball will be out quickly. Playing that boundary side, you have to play with a little bit more aggressiveness. Now, the positive to this, to me, is this. We have guys that can naturally play in off coverage. Cam Sutton, while he's had his ups and downs, he can naturally play in off coverage, in zone coverage as well, where he can sit down and break back to the football. We saw even in the last game on the slant, where he broke up the pass against Mike Evans. He can play in that coverage, okay? So I have some confidence with him handling business there. I think he can actually come up with a massive play in this game that shakes things up just based on Lions are playing cover 3. It wouldn't shock me if San Fran's like, hey, let's go at that guy a little bit on the outside. And a lot of times it's going to be Brandon Ayuk who they're going to try to set up in those spots.
How Dan Campbell stresses leverage between corners and safeties? This is exactly that matchup to me. Here in this quarters look, you can see with the safety, he gets beat on kind of the show to the corner and then back with the post route from the slot on this play. And this is where they like to run that. You see the dig in the slot. They do that for timing. That way they can do the dig, and if it's not there, you can come back to the post to that second read. While at the same time here, I also want to have an issue if the Lions were like, hey, let's just play to the boundary side. Kindle Vilder, we can allow him to be aggressive, and then every time on the field side, we'll just put Cam Sutton over there to give him a little more space to dive on the ball. I wouldn't hate it. I doubt it, but I wouldn't hate it.
Now, with that, this is where you'll get a lot of no-look throws from Brock Purdy as well, especially when they have a seam and then an out. This is where he's no-looking. He's holding the seam, and then he just throws the out route without even seeing the corner. So the issue to that is you can't just read the cornerback's eyes or the wide quarterback's eyes as a corner, right? You have to really base it on his footwork, right? Once he plants, dive, right? You see the receiver dive, you dive. That's kind of the way I look at this. It's okay to be aggressive. Maybe you give up a double move, but at the same time, I think in a way, you kind of have to be willing to try to make plays on that because maybe you come out and you're saying, hey, give it to him, but I think you have to be aggressive in that sense. So if you are going to play cover 3, if you are going to put a safety in the box, they're going to go at that. So to me, I think even if you're not biting or jumping on them, you have to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of the depth that you give. You can't just be letting them catch that, because at some point you're going to have to adjust, because they'll just go over and over and over to it. What I like against this team is quarters coverage. Now, what you do see, again, you see it a lot of different ways. So Dan Campbell talked about daggers, but what you got to get a lot is a variation of in-breaking routes, dig routes, post, a lot of in-breaking routes within this offense, and a lot of times they'll come from slot alignments. They'll put Kittle in the slot, they'll run this, they'll run double post, they'll run a dig and then a post on each side, and they'll set it up with the timing so that when, the dig hits, if it's not there, he can then hitch and then come back to the post, and it's like, oh, it's on time with the break. So a lot of this, we know it's a timing offense, but at the same time, a lot of those in-breaking routes is the key. It's a huge reason why I love quarters in this game. We saw it at the beginning of the Packers game, and he threw it right to the safety, and he tried to move somebody, but he didn't move anybody. He threw it right at the safety. I like this coverage because if you're aggressive with your safeties in quarters, you can take away that spot of the field, right? You can do a really nice job and potentially come up with big plays diving on those in-break routes. And I think when you have CD Deuce, Ife Melifonwu, Kirby Joseph, guys that will make plays on the football in that spot, I do like that coverage a lot against this team. Now, the downside is you have two deep safeties, but it can also stop the run depending on how aggressive you stay at depth. That's a coverage that I would run a ton. I think it was one of the more effective coverages, but I also think a big part of this, again, if you're going to play cover 4, I like rolling between that and cover 3. Like, hey, let's roll safeties. Let's roll safeties. Now, we can live in, say, quarters, but maybe every, second or third first down. All right, if we're doing this on first down, let's now roll the safety. Let's roll the safety. Like, you have to continue to mix that with wrinkles, because every game I've watched, if a team just sits in one thing in one situation, boom, they're going to get someone wide open. Even if they don't hit it, there was times they didn't hit it, but you'd see the design, you're like, oh yeah, that's going to beat that coverage. So you have to just give wrinkles to that, more so than the quarterback. To me, it's more so about the play caller on the opposite side. You have to be able to mix that, and you got to have like an offbeat mix to it, because if not, they're going to have a beater for it. They're going to set it up if they continue to see the same thing over and over and over and over. And it won't take that long for them to do that. So I like mixing those coverages. Tampa came out. They played some cover 6. I didn't think it worked extremely well, because on the cover 2 side, they had some issues. And one thing that you will see with Purdy is that they'll take kind of the simplified side for sure. Like, one thing they like to do against zone is they like to overload a side of zone. They'll also, in cover 6 looks, they'll do a really nice job of kind of going to the cover 2 side. Like, okay, let's go. 2 guys over here, 1, 2, just throw it over there.
And I thought Green Bay just did a really good job the entire game, whether that was the underneath defenders carrying vertical through the slot, or you see in cases like this, again, just being disciplined on the backside here in the quarters coverage look, not cheating over too far, reading the eyes. Their offense is a lot of 1-2, right? It's like, okay, 1, don't love that, let's come back to 2. And they set it up timing-wise where it's either double slants or double post. You'll get a lot of the 1-2, 1-2. And that's no knock on Brock Purdy. That's just a great job by Kyle Shanahan. They just set things on time. But where Green Bay threw them off was they threw off that inside timing, then it came back to finding 3, whether that was a scramble or the check down, and that's where I thought they found success.
Very willing to use their running backs out of the backfield. So when you play cover 6, when you play quarters, you're going to get a lot of underneath passes. You're going to get a guy that's very willing to check the ball down. You're going to get a lot of Christian McCaffrey underneath. To me, I think I'd be okay with this. I don't think I want to give up the big play. Now, the issue there is run after catch, but to me, I want Brock Purdy to have to work offensively. I don't want a big play and then it's like, get off the field. I don't want that. I don't want to play from behind either in this game. So if anything, I want to make them work. So I'm cool with playing 2 deep safeties. Now again, the run game becomes a part of that. That's why rolling safeties can help in aggressive depth. But at the same time, to me, that's how I'm playing this. I'm cool with playing that for a lot of the game. I think every situation I looked at, I went through. I didn't do this by numbers, but I just went through and I charted each play from like 4 different games that I watched. Way less effective in a 2 deep safety look. And to me, that's how I would be playing this a lot of times, especially on base downs against him offensively. Now, when you get a second and long, this is one of the best little wrinkles that I thought Green Bay threw at San Fran. It was inverting Tampa 2 looks or cover 2 looks defensively, and I thought they did a really good job. So a lot of teams run Tampa 2. If it's second and long, if they can get him behind a chance of first down, they'll run like Tampa 2. That way they can take away a dagger over the middle of the field. But this is one of those teams that will run 2 digs, right? They'll run a dagger, then they'll have one deep behind it late. And we saw that against Green Bay where they made like a ridiculous catch. The guy wasn't open, but they had 2 dig routes. It was like, here's the first one, it's not there. Now go back to the second guy. This is a team that will do that. So Tampa 2 makes sense, right? And even though they covered it up well, it should have been taken away even in cover 2. But I also love the way that Green Bay was inverting this coverage, meaning that, their cornerbacks would drop into the safety spots, the safeties rolled around, and they play underneath in coverage instead of just, having a corner sit underneath and safety sit on top and kind of bracketing that in. You'd roll it at the snap. So you drop in and you'd back up. And what that did is it really took away those second-level throws. And at the same time, I thought at times it got Brock Purdy to kind of hesitate, be like, I don't like that, let's go somewhere else. And that's when he started missing some passes. Obviously, you could point to some of the rain there. But I thought it was a really really nice coverage wrinkle that I haven't seen anybody else do from when I watched is the inverted cover 2 Tampa 2 looks, especially on second and long. I would be doing that absolutely. I'd take that right from Green Bay and be like, we're doing the exact same thing occasionally in this game as well. Now, man coverage, I think it can be fine. The challenge is this, really, it's going to be Brandon Ayuk on the outside. That's really going to be the challenge against man coverage in this. Just down to defensively, oftentimes you would see teams kind of play cover 3, and that's, again, where you get the outside, you get the speed out routes, you get the flats that they're going to attack. And again, like I said, they'll find beaters if you sit there. Cover 4, I felt, was the most effective in terms of just limiting yards. 2 deep safeties. Cover 6 was kind of hit and miss with Tampa Bay, but 2 deep safeties in general. Now, on second down, like we said, second and long, I love the inverted coverage. I also still like quarters coverage here. It was still effective. And then kind of second and medium spots, this is where I liked cover 3 more than man. I don't love man against this team, and I think a big reason for that is just because they have so many, especially if it's not a long situation, is because they have so many beaters one-on-one. Like, that's the issue. They have so many second-level beaters where you go Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey acts as a receiver, right? They have so many beaters where, especially if it's not a third down and you're not matching personnel and you got linebackers out there, now it's like, okay, they're going to find somebody. So in that case, it's almost like, well, let's lean into the blitz then. Let's play cover 1 and blitz. The issue with that is I don't think blitzing really works that well against this team. If the Lions can find a way to consistently get guys free as a pass rusher, I saw one example where someone was completely free, and it was, I believe it was Tampa, that Brits had a guy come at the tackle, and they had brought an edge off the backside, and the tackle left the edge, and it was like, all right, they broke down, and he just gave a free rush up. That didn't happen often, though. So if anything, if you can try to run and mimic something like that, like we get 2 on the tackle and see if we can, so the offense, let's see if we can get the offense line to not shift by keep playing 5 on the front. A lot of teams play 5 guys on the line of scrimmage against this team, so maybe you can get in a spot where they kind of stop shifting towards it, then you can get one guy unblocked. Third down and short, I do like cover 1. Again, the key is middle field. So, Robert looks, Rats in the middle of the field, and I also would not necessarily match coverage based on personnel. I would not look at Kittle and say, he's a tight end, let's put a linebacker out there. No, not on third down. Not on third down. If it's 3rd and 1, okay, I get it because you want to stop the run. But anything, honestly, like 3rd and 3 plus, I'm putting a safety out there. I'm playing an extra DB because McCaffrey becomes a receiver for them, and he's basically like a receiver running routes. So they'll just line him out wide and put him on your linebacker and be like, all right, we'll go at that. Kittle gets a linebacker. They're going to go at that. So while you can cover it at times, I don't want to live in that matchup. So if it's 3rd and you're pretty sure they're passing it, don't match personnel. Put DBs on the field. Throw your 3rd safety out there. Let's play it like this. Do not give them one-on-ones with linebackers. I do like Alex, so if it's like their number 2 tight end, it's not the number 1, that's fine. But I would not be matching personnel for personnel in a lot of those spots. Thanks to left guard. 1, I think he struggles a little bit with quickness, like really good quickness. So if a James Houston's playing, for example, and maybe the Lions want to try to blitz, they want to try to slant inside, and then maybe they can open something off of that. I think one of the best ways you can have success with stunts and twists and loops is by getting speed on the inside, right? Because then you can work off of that and someone else gets free because of it. I don't think they do a bad job at all at picking those up. So if you can get quickness on the interior, but Aaron Banks is a guy that I think you can beat with quickness and play action sets. You can just beat him off the line. You can beat him to his gap. And secondly, you can also beat him with the bull rush. On top of that, the right guard. I don't love it either. Burford at right guard. First off, we're going to see a lot of Hutchinson on the right side as usual. McKivitz is going to get that matchup. I think you can overpower him. But also at right guard, I think you can win that one-on-one. So Hutchinson can have a big day in that spot again, especially if they're blitzing. They allow him to jump inside. But also, as always, I think this is a big Ali McNeil spot. Like, this is a big Ali McNeil spot. Not only run, but also pass rush as well. I think they pick up the blitz well. I think they pick up movement on the defensive line well between their running back and their offensive line. So if they leave CMC in the block, really that's one of the best upsides, right? It's like, hey, if we blitz, maybe we leave Christian in the block, and now we play, cover 1 and we blitz. That's an area where if you feel good about that, then I got you, right? You put the safety down on Kittle, and you blitz, and you're thinking CMC's going to stay in. I'm not mad at spots like that. That's just the issue. You can't let him leave and get a one-on-one. If you're going to blitz and he's going to stay in, I'm fine with that. Maybe we'll see some of that because we know Glenn likes to blitz. I just didn't see a lot of teams have success with it. Offensively, in this game, you can see the 49ers' defensive statistics. They're not great against the run. I mean, the yards per game is pretty good, but when you're beating a lot of teams, that's where teams just don't run the football anymore. Also on the front, as you can see, their PFF grades, really good pass rushers, really good. And obviously, I didn't put everybody on here. They have seen a lot of depth played this year, whether that's Givens or Kinlaw, and you can kind of roll down. They've seen a lot of guys. There's guys that I was watching play that aren't even on the roster right now. They got a lot of depth there. They have a lot of good depth, I think, as well, and a lot of pass rushers. Now, their pass defense statistics are really strong, mainly the interceptions, 22 interceptions, 4th in passer rating. Give them a high completion percentage. Third down defense is an elite. Red zone defense, middle of the pack. And points per game is 3rd. As you can see, also, they don't blitz a lot, and their pressure rate's kind of middle of the pack. So, honestly, a lot of those pass defensive stats I really like as a Lions fan outside of the interceptions. When teams don't create a ton of pressure statistically without blitzing, I usually have confidence going into that. Now, maybe at times San Fran cranks it up in this one, but I think we do well against the blitz. They just don't blitz a lot. Also make this point about the Lions defense in this one. When they get into the red zone, what I like in this one is, again, quarters coverage. I love that. The issue is you have to watch for like bootlegs because they'll kind of delay the receiver and set him out, or they'll also run a lot of kind of crossovers with a wheel the tight end, or they'll delay stuff and they'll kind of delay routes out, get guys open. But also, once they get inside like the 5, I'm playing goal line man. I'm putting guys in the middle of the field, and I'm asking my DBs to play outside leverage.
To me, this is where Kyle Shanahan gets in his bag, man. It's all about just being disciplined when you get to the spot. You have to keep an eye on everybody. Just like this, he walks out Debo on his jet motion like, nah, he ain't getting the ball, and then he releases to the end zone. This is where he's crafty. One of the touchdowns they had earlier this year, Christian McCaffrey steps through the offensive line to get open against man coverage. Like, that's the little things. It's all about these little things where you just kind of forget somebody in the red zone. That's where Lions, I think, has improved, is they have veterans in the back end, so they're communicating well. But that's what the red zone's about, man. It's about either you communicate well and you take it away, or someone busts and someone's wide open. And in this case, that's what they do really well. Now, flip it here, you can see, notice how they get pressure on this play. Again, they try to slant inside of the tackle, win with speed, and then they can open up kind of that outside lane. Pass rush lanes are pretty important against Purdy because he will move, especially after that second read. But in this case, as you can see, this can keep that collapsed. And on top of it, again, that's the way that you can get pressure because these guards aren't that quick anyway. So once you get them to have to cover more ground, you're in a good spot.
That's what I'm doing. You'll see them. They'll try to hit corner routes. They'll try to beat the outside leverage. That's what I'm doing. They love to go to their slots. That's the way that I'm playing it defensively. I think Brock Purdy, a lot of the time, in my opinion, from what I've seen, is that he can miss guys open. He does a nice job of, he stays on script, right? He's going to go through his reads. When he's comfortable, man, he delivers some really good passes. He's also got solid accuracy as well for the most part, especially on some of the out-breaking routes. He's pretty darn accurate there specifically, but he can miss things. And I think you have to kind of disguise coverage a little bit at times against this guy. You want to get them, obviously, in the obvious passing downs, but he can absolutely miss things. And I don't think the blitz was the thing that was like throwing him off. It's like, hey, wait till you blitz him. You can get pressure with 4, great, but it wasn't a blitz that was throwing him off. I think you get a lot of 1-2, and then he's going to start to move, right? 1-2 read, I'm going to start to move. And especially you'd see that in like the red zone. Okay, I'm not waiting until 3. There's not even pressure, but I'm going to start to move. That's what I see with Purdy is 1-2, he's going to start to move. And because of that, can you get him past 1 and 2? And the Lions have success rushing the football. To be honest, I think they can have success in a lot of ways rushing the football against this defense. Really just depends on who you're watching and what schematically they want to do. Green Bay came in with a lot of outside rushing, and they had some success, some good success against the San Francisco 49ers. Other teams like Arizona, a lot of like outside zone rushing plays. So just depend on who you were watching and what their kind of game plan was going into that. I think the truth is this. I don't think they're great up front against the run. I think they have specific key pieces. A lot of times Javon Hargrave can kind of put himself into that, but specifically Arik Armstead, maybe their most consistent run defender. But I don't think they have a lot of great pieces against the run on the defensive front. Now the challenge will be this. A lot of KO'd one-on-one, right? Is KO'd winning that matchup one-on-one? If Jonas here, I feel even better about this, but that'll be the key matchup. If he's consistently blowing blocks in the interior and you start to lose some of that edge, the positive is I think you can win with the outside rushing attack. So I think the Lions can be very multiple based on what's working. I don't think they have to pigeonhole themselves into one rushing scheme, and if it doesn't work, like, oh, dang, that's a problem. Lions can run a lot of different ways, I think, against this team. But that'll be a key matchup, of course, KO'd playing in this game. So for Green Bay, a lot of stretch runs, a lot of sweeps as well. Pin and pulls, you saw them kind of go at Bosa. We're young, I guess, but also a lot of times at Bosa. Kind of pin down, get outside of that. Also, defensively, you play a lot of heavy personnel. Why? Well, teams will play 13-12. Number one, again, they're going to match personnel to that defensively, so you're going to get more backers on the field. Also, on top of that, and also you can kind of slide at times Fred Warner to like more of that middle linebacker position once you get them to go 3 off-ball linebackers. And open up, especially if you're trying to get wide some of your rushing scheme. You can try to keep away from that guy essentially because he is far and away their best linebacker. Greenlaw's good, but he's far and away their best linebacker, especially against the run because he's patient, but also when he goes, he's a problem, and he's very difficult to connect with at the second level. Greenlaw is fast, man. He can close, but it's really difficult to block up Fred Warner at the second level. Tight ends blocking their defensive backs. I think we can. I don't think this is the best run defensive support specifically from the defensive backs when blocked. Now, unblocked, they're a problem. And you'll see this a lot of times on the backside, a lot of times the slot. You can also create big explosive off this because their slots are aggressive to fill run lanes. So you can get a lot of, especially with 2 high safeties, run fake, hit a quick screen on the outside, right? Safety's got to come over. Here comes the corner. But you can get kind of a 2-on-1 quickly and pick up nice chunks quick on plays with a quick run fake and just swing it out into a quick little screen because their slots a lot of times will get aggressive aggressive in those spots. However, I don't think we're going to have – I think we're going to be fine. Tight ends blocking second level. Zach Ertz, we signed him for a reason. He could be effective there. Heavy personnel. Sam Laporta, we can be effective getting up to those guys. In receivers versus DBs, I think we can win there. But a lot of times on those outside run plays, like I said, I'm running away from Fred Warner. With the outside zone rushing attack, if a guy like Kinlaw is in there, he's fast off the line of scrimmage. They have a lot of, kind of explosive pieces off the line of scrimmage. But I think we can have success. Number one, I think we can get under Armstead. I think you can block under Armstead, kind of move him off the spot a little bit in that sense. But then again, the defensive back run support, like I said, is key. I think you can move Javon Hargrave. He has not been great against the run. He's a big, squatty, kind of thick defensive lineman, but I think you can move him, and he doesn't bring a lot of, upfield penetration, but that will seemingly be a pretty key block. Makes the outside zone effective against this team, and why I think the Lions can do it, especially if KO is having a solid day, is one, I think you can move their interior defensive lineman, and two, Fred Warner is patient until the ball is kind of handed off, right? He's going to fill his gap, and he has a gap that he's going to fill, so if the Lions can move defensive tackles, they can move them off their gaps, but specifically, he's going to fill his gap, but he's going to do it really quickly, a lot of speed, a lot of downhill momentum, but at the same time, he also is patient to the point where he's going to wait to see kind of where it's going. And because of that, I think you have an opportunity to get to the second level if you're moving guys initially off the line. So if guys like Frank are dominant at the point of attack against these interior guys, it's kind of like the shove them off to the guard, let me get to the second level, and you have maybe a heavy personnel look, and you got, multiple linebackers, you can get up to Warner, you can have success doing that. Now, then the challenge is, can you block Warner at second level? But I think the Lions can get up to the second level, which is really the first and most important thing, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Like I said, power runs, if we're pulling offensive linemen, the key is going to be KO'd one-on-one, unless the Lions are just pulling him all the time. Also, I think in this one, trap runs can be very effective, especially when they have two deep safeties, because again, their defensive linemen, where they're really talented, is they're quick, they're fast to get upfield. Some of them are very tall as well, so trap runs can be very effective because they can just run by plays, especially against two deep safeties. Inside zone run plays, if you want to kind of live into that, hey, let's get to the A gaps here. The backside, tight ends on the edge is going to be the key, right? Don't get blown up by Nick Bosa, because Bosa will just destroy plays off the backside. That's what he does. And then in some of the duo run, the double teams, I see that kind of happening more in the goal line spots. Givens, another guy, I think you can move him off the point of attack as well. The wrinkles I think the Lions have to have, but I think in a way, I could be wrong, I think the Lions may have been setting this up a little bit last week. Jameis Williams' usage on some of the end arounds that they never gave the ball to, but they showed a few times, would not be shocked if at one point in this game he gets an end around handoff. Lions go outside zone, they hand it off to J-Mo, and he takes off for a big play. That the Lions were trying to set that up last week, knowing that they'd see that and be like, okay, this week he's going to get it. I would not be shocked if that's something that the Lions had, and they're like, they're not giving it to him anyway. And then all of a sudden he gets it in this game, that it was almost more so set up for the future. Would not surprise me against this team, because I think that's another way where not only can you get up to the second level, but another way that you can try to kind of slow down their momentum as a defensive line, as an edge front, but also as their linebackers that are just, they close really quickly, is just occasionally, not often, one or two times, just give them that. Make them respect it one or two times, right? You get a lot of split zone blocking from offenses. Just make them respect the jet run. Just make them respect kind of the end around late. That's something you can definitely set up, because it's usually going to happen after the run fake. And like I said, that's where I see Fred Warner usually dive. He sees the handoff, now he's going to dive. That's where he set up the end around. So I almost guarantee the Lions are going to have a big play on that in this game.
Now, there's a couple things that stand out on these two plays. So first off, here you see that strong double team to movement they get on the 2 technique here. I mean, they just get under the pads and move him off the ball. But notice on the backside versus Hargrave, the 3 technique, he wins the one-on-one and he helps shut this down. Also, the tight end gets blown up by the edge defender. Now, on this next play, here's where you get that sweep. And this is where the outside rushing, especially the stretch plays, I really like it. But at the same time, while I feel like we can get there consistently, the second level is where Warner is tough. If you can get inside zone or outside zone movement, you can almost just kind of create a wall up to him. And I think the Lions can do that. But if it's not there, they may get to more of the outside look. But this is where Warner's so difficult when you try to do this, because as soon as he recognizes Cody Mao trying to seal him up, he immediately just darts outside, and it's just like, nope, you're not going to seal up this block. And all of a sudden, he becomes unblockable at the second level. So that's where he is a very big challenge, and you want to stay away from him.
Your offense line is winning. They will find outside zone consistency. If not, let's go to the wide rushing attack, specifically behind Graham Glasgow, right? And again, you want to go away from Fred Warner if possible, in my opinion, but specifically go away from Graham, whether that's ask him to utilize him on a stretch and just say, hey, get the front side of this guy, right? Get the front side on this block and maintain that, or get up to the second level, or also pull off the backside. Go behind Graham, utilize his athleticism. He's been really good there this year in just front-siding defensive tackles. They play the 3 technique on the strong side most of the time. They don't shift their defensive line, but that is an opportunity for you as an offense to utilize Graham Glasgow's athleticism and win that way. So if that's not working, utilize the wide rushing attack. The Lions will find a way to run the ball in this game. I almost guarantee it. If it's the inside side stuff more often, obviously Monty can work there. But I think Gibbs could be really special in this game because as good as Warner and these guys are, Gibbs is also special. And as good as the linebacker is, I just don't think there's a guy that he can't make miss in open field. I really don't. And you get him going wide, I just think he's going to make somebody miss. So, to me, he could be very effective, break some big runs, change this game. And then passing the football. Now, I know everybody wants to throw the stats. Oh, man, how did Goff do against the Niners? Honestly, it doesn't matter because, first off, that whole argument doesn't make any sense to me, number one, just because of this reason alone. You could have did the same thing about Brian Flores. Wow, look what happens when he plays Flores. He's going to be terrible. Doesn't make any sense. Why? Because he had great success against Brian Flores and the Minnesota Vikings. Because it's not about Goff versus the defense. It's not like it's the player versus defense. It's the system against your system. All right? It's this offense against your defense. It's not a player against your defense. It's not like, I know how to destroy this guy. No. All right, yeah, get him under pressure. He's not as good. Yes, that's every quarterback. Like, that's not a strategy, all right? I don't want to hear that. That's not a strategy, okay? It's not. It's going to be this system against their system. And in this case, like the Brian Flores situation, we were successful against a team that like the blitz. You looked at the history, you'd be like, they can't do nothing with Goff in this one. What do you do? He was great. In this game, it's going to be a challenge, not because of they know Goff. It's going to be a challenge because their defense is really strong. That's why. They have ball hawks across the board. They're long at the cornerback position. Their safeties are good, even with injuries, and the linebackers are some of the best in coverage. That's why it's a challenge. Oh, and also, they have some of the best pass rushers on the front, and they can rotate. That's why they're not a challenge because they played Goff before. They're a challenge because they're just really good across the board. Give them a lot of credit. However, this is kind of what I noticed when watching them. So we'll start here. First down defense. Oftentimes, you're going to see a lot of quarters looks. Occasionally, you'll get kind of cover one, cover three, but you're going to see quarters looks. This is where a lot of that underneath passing attack can become very important for the Lions, and they can have some effectiveness here. Number two, you also get an opportunity to get one-on-ones on the outside. Here's the key to this. It's first off is that what I noticed with this defense and where the linebackers are really good is they do a great job of getting depth. Really, Fred Warner is so good at he could take away crossers 20 yards down the field. The thing that they leave open oftentimes is the chip release, the flats, the tight end underneath. They leave that open. Now, for me, knowing that, I've seen this with other teams too, and I usually come in, I'm like, oh, Lions are just going to check it out all game. And then they don't. That's usually not their strategy. But I do think that Gibbs, Laporta, and Ertz, there's a reason we signed Ertz because they want an effective pass catcher level one. Those guys can be very effective, especially on early downs. Now, with that being said, if you're backed up, it's second and long. Again, you'll get more quarters, but you'll also get some Tampa 2 looks. You'll get cover 3, cover 1. This is where screens become effective against this defense in particular. Screens be very effective, especially against some of their cover 1 looks. Against man, a lot of teams would run screens, and I saw real effectiveness there. Third down and short, you see those cover 3 looks, so that's where I focus on the slots. Again, a guy like Laporta, the tight end position, the slots there, the Amon-Ra St. Brown's creating one-on-ones, getting the matchups that you like, especially if you can go to heavy personnel in short situations. When it gets a little bit further, that's where you start to see them kind of single up, and you get some of those cover 1. Now, the key about this, again, they don't blitz a ton. The key to this is when you look at some of the matchups on them defensively. Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore, Darius Ward. You start with a guy like Ambry Thomas. He is their most inconsistent corner from just what I've seen when watching. What I see is, first off, he can lack some quickness at the top of the route. I thought Romeo Dubs just gave him a lot of issues all day long in that one. Speed, just straight speed, could be a little bit of a problem, and he could be beat off the line. Where he is good, he's very physical. He can hound your receiver, and he has very good ball skills, and that's the case with a lot of their corners. With that, though, Jameson, if he gets this matchup, he's going to have a big play. So I think they're going to want to avoid letting Jameson get this matchup because he's going to have a big play against this guy, a double move. You're going to have effectiveness at the top of the route. I would also look for the Lions to try to get St. Brown one-on-one on the outside, as we typically see, especially against some of those cover 3 looks. Try to get him one-on-one, heavy personnel, maybe go single back play action. They're not going to blitz, so hold up in the front.
Throwing on early downs can help, but against a team that doesn't like to blitz, boot action, very effective. Misdirection, we saw it the first time we played this team a couple years back, how effective the misdirection can be because you're usually not going to have pressure immediately in his face. And as long as he can boot around, they're selling to the run. Now you're going to open up layers without pressure in his face. The thing that takes
this front up is as good as they are as pass rushing. It's not an obvious pass down. They don't rush the same because they have to respect the run. So on early downs, again, passing the ball, as usual, as we've seen recently, is an effective strategy. Though their pass defense is really good, I think we can run the ball in this game. However, this is a spot where St. Brown getting out wide, like you can separate against this guy at the top of the route if you get that matchup.
Definitely are ways to minimize their linebacker play in the middle of the field. Number one, quick clear outs and quick routes towards the outside the numbers, right? Quick slants, one-on-one, get him one-on-one with the cornerbacks, using slots, putting St. Brown, Laporta, put him in a slot, out-breaking routes towards the numbers. And then, of course, if I get cover 1, I'm going right to that little touch pass that Goff has been throwing money since week 1 in 2021 against this Niners team.
Now, Diamador Lenore, another physical corner. I think he can lack a little bit of acceleration at the line of scrimmage, so maybe that's where you can try to get some of the speed and the slot effectiveness. But he's a guy with excellent ball skills. And then Ward, very physical at the line, but he feels a little bit stiff in some of his change of direction at the top of the route. And I think a guy like Josh Reynolds could have success there against St. Brown. So I think on the outside, not only can the Lions get a big play with speed, but I think, again, St. Brown on the outside, I would expect to see that, especially if they're going to lean into some of that heavy personnel. And then, again, I think they're going to try to use that personnel to an advantage because as good as Warner is at getting depth, it also opens up the underneath.
No, I do think one of the most effective setups the Lions can utilize is kind of that mesh look, and specifically because, again, of the depth that a guy like Warner gets, just use it as a clear out and set up underneath it. For the Lions, where they're effective against zone is they have players that will spot up and can recognize that. That's the key here. It's racing away, but also being able to spot up, or really just clouding and overloading the middle of the field against some of these zone looks in particular. That's where this can be effective. You could even use Jamison in a spot like this, where if it's man, he could just run through, and if it's zone, he can just clear out.
It becomes very long third down. This is where you see either they're going to go cover one, they'll man up again, or they'll play a cover three just like us. They play it very similar. They'll have a safety roll down, but it'll sit on the sticks. I didn't notice that, but yeah, San Fran actually plays very similarly on third and long, just like we do defensively. So one, we should have great practice against that. Like, hey, we've seen this. We know what we want. We saw Dubs have a big play against them where they end up drawing a flag because he just beat the corner one-on-one. So there's that option. You could just try to get the corner one-on-one and run by somebody. That's a real option in that spot as well. But the Lions have seen that coverage because that's exactly what they do when a team is backed up on third and long, right? That's where you get the deep curls on the outside. Now, the challenge with them is they do a nice job of breaking on the ball at the top of the route, right? From sitting, especially from an off-covered spot. They do a really nice job in those spots. Once you get inside the 20 against this team, about 20 yards out, again, you'll get some quarters. I saw a great play by Green Bay with little fake screen, then they got over top. Also, you saw double post, which is kind of a Green Bay thing that they just do. They did a nice job, again, diving on that. They do a really good job with film, so wrinkles will have to be there offensively for what they like to do. Once you get inside about the 5, they love goal line man as well. Pick plays, they just work. All right, they work against this defense. Like I said, statistically, they're 16th. They're middle of the pack in red zone. They work against them. Now, you know, they'll change things up, but you can get guys open if you're creative with how you create kind of your pick plays against the man coverage they're going to get. In terms of handling that pressure, here's how you do it. Number one, chip Joey Bosa. Everybody I've seen do it, they do. We're probably going to do too, especially multiple tight ends. You leave a tight end in line, you chip him off the line, then you release. It makes them really effective too because everybody's going to drop out. Second thing, avoid third and long at all costs, right? You want to stay out of those spots unless you're just going to get the ball out quickly and let someone try to do something after the catch because they just rush different. They just get upfield immediately. You don't want them to be able to do it. You want them to say play, run first, then go. And the Lions, obviously, it's more difficult as a defense to get upfield when you can run play action on early downs because, you know, you have a zone play action. They got to flow with the offensive line. So there's that aspect of it too, especially if you have that outside zone going. But again, early down passing, as well as I think we'll be able to run the football into this game. So we should be able to get a nice little balance going there. But again, they have a lot of good dudes. I think that it starts with Arik Armstead, but then also Javon Kinlaw, Harger. I mean, they can all get pressure in the interior, but it does start with Armstead. And as well as why you want to avoid third and long is they're great in third and long on like cover zero. Right? They are really good at that, dropping out their DTs, bring it off the edge. Everybody covers up well. They usually handle that pretty well in coverage in those spots, and they're usually going to get someone home because of how many players they're bringing.
The one spot they seem to kind of feel a little bit vulnerable is the fact that they switch kind of based on the stack here on the release. So maybe this is a spot you can create quick leverage in these spots where if you think they're going to bring the blitz. And they don't blitz a ton. I saw them do it against the Ravens before half, but they don't do it often.
Stay on top of the chains in this game. Take what's underneath. Take your level 1 targets. And when they start to creep, when they start to go quarters, just like Dallas, Jamison burn them over top, right? I mean, that's kind of a simplified way to do it, but I do think the Lions will be able to run this ball in this game. I think they'll find a way to run it. I think Gibbs will be very effective, and I think offensively they're going to be effective even without Jonah Jackson in this one. So that leads to my key players for this one. Defensively, it's going to be Derek Barnes first. I could put like everybody on here. Number 2, I kind of cheated. Whoever is one-on-one with Brandon Ayuk on the outside, honestly, you could probably throw Debo into this because he's good in contested situations. He's pretty good from what I've seen, especially though because he runs a lot of crossing routes. He just runs away from guys. Now, again, another thing with Purdy here, right? They'll run some of those concepts where he'll hold it and he'll throw it into traffic, but he's pretty good in contested situations. And then also, I would say, the linebacker position just in general, in zone coverage, right, keeping depth, or the safeties being aggressive, but linebackers keeping depth, finding those routes behind them, and also staying disciplined. Don't just float out of your zone because there comes another dagger. And then on top of that would be Brian Branch and underneath zone coverage that also he could completely change this game by his run defense, blitzing or just being on the front side and stopping a run. Offensively, I circle KO at left guard because I think he can be a key matchup a lot of this game, but also I would say Graham Glasgow. I think the guard play between Graham Glasgow, KO, and Frank can completely move everybody on the front if he's right. I know he's dealing some things, but if Frank is on his game, he can completely change this game. We can get consistent movement. I think everything becomes tough for them. Also, that leads me to Jahmyr Gibbs because I think he can break this thing on the outside if that's not there. On top of that, I would also say Jameson Williams. He's due for a big play. He's due for a breakout. I think he's set up to have one in this matchup in this game, rushing the football, but also catching the ball. And then finally, the tight end usage against this team. I'm very confident Lions are going to win this football game. I think when you see how we match up, I think we match up in a lot of good ways offensively against this team. I think we have the pieces to beat them offensively. If our pass protection is on point against the four-man rush, which it has been, but again, it comes back to KO because interior pressure is the fastest point to the quarterback. We can run the ball on this team. We have the receivers to win at the top of the route against this defense. We have the speed to be effective. We also have the rushing versatility scheme. And then on the defense side of the ball, that's the challenge. I think the Lions are going to say, don't give up the explosive, and we'll be fine. And that comes back to Cam Sutton-Vilder. But the positive, I say, you'll see a lot of off coverage. I want to be more aggressive. I would like to see the Lions invert, do some Tampa 2 inverts, shake it up there. But I do think that we have the corners that are most comfortable playing against this style of offense. And it only takes one. It only takes breaking one route to completely change up this game. And we have the safeties to take the ball away. So to me, I think the Lions are built for this. I think they're built to beat this team. And because of that, I think the Lions are going to win this football game. I'm going to go 28-24. Lions win this one. No field goals from the Lions in this game. Obviously, San Francisco would then have one. But they end the ball with Jared Goff, ball in his hands, and he's taking a knee. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching.